HowtoDandD. It's time to talk about the lost mine of phandelver again. One of my favourite topics as it happens, and it seems to be very popular, so obviously I'm going to keep doing it. And today, one of the big questions a lot of people have, how do I get them invested in Gundren Rockseeker and actually give them a hand? Alright, sound check is all good. For some reason I've managed to schedule my live stream at the same time as AJ Pickett. I don't know how that happened. It was not my intention, so if people are a little bit annoyed by that, I do apologise. I had no idea he was scheduling right now in New Zealand at the same time as me. So if you're re-watching the video, you've just got to look down in the description. You should find the start time listed down there once it gets published by YouTube. I might be a little bit behind on things because I've had a few technical problems with my channel. If you're watching my live stream for the very first time, one of the things you'll notice is I tend to do all of my talking first, and then once I've done all my talking, I open it up and I will chat with anybody in the chat box. So by all means, put your comments in before I open it up. I will come back to your questions and whatever you've had to say, and you know, there will be an opportunity near the end. So let us get on with it. I can see there's a whole bunch of people starting to jump in, and just make sure I've got a drink of water on me. Party tactics. I don't know if I can call it party tactics. There's a monster in the woods, burn it all down. It's not really tactics, but well, I suppose it is some sort of tactic. Okay, let us start. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're talking about the Lost Mine of Phandelver. This is full of spoilers. It is for the Dungeon Master. It is a Dungeon Master guide. It's not a player guide for anybody who might be getting confused by that. So if you thought it was, no, it's not. So yes, if you're a player and you're playing in this adventure, this is the time for you to truck off, because there are spoilers and you will ruin it for your Dungeon Master and yourself. Okay, let us get straight into it. Why should the players help Gundren Rockseeker in his predicament? Essentially, we know that Gundren is going to get ambushed and he's going to get captured, and the players are going to have to go and rescue him. But it doesn't always work out that way. Why does it not work out that way? And I'll explain to you why it doesn't work out that way in detail. The first problem, one of the greatest aspects to the Lost Mine of Phandelver, is also one of its strongest weaknesses, and that is those individual character goals that have been created on the back of the pre-generated character sheets. Now I want to read some of them out briefly and explain to you where the problem lies. And we'll start off straight with the dwarf. The dwarf is supposed to be related to the Rockseekers, the Rockseeker brothers, related to Gundren Rockseeker. But the personal goal for this particular cleric or dwarf is teaching the Red Brands a lesson. Okay, you've basically heard that Phandalin, the town Phandalin, is looking for people to help deal with some bullies. So that doesn't really relate to necessarily helping Gundren. It certainly will get you to Phandalin, but it doesn't actually solve the issue of will you actually help Gundren. You're related, but there's nothing else. I would have thought it would have been smarter to make that personal goal to help Gundren Rockseeker set up his mining operation in Phandalin. But it doesn't read as that. Okay, so there's the first issue in terms of those individual goals that they provide you with. The rogue, the pre-generated rogue, their personal goal is revenge. Someone in the Red Brands nearly got you killed. So you've got to track them down. There's somebody called Glassstaff who's part of the Red Brands, tipped off somebody. So you've got to hunt them down and find them. And of course, these Red Brands are somewhere in Phandalin. Okay, well that gets you to Phandalin, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're there to help Gundren Rockseeker. Yet again, it's good that it's tying it into some of the aspects of the adventure, but it's not actually focusing on Gundren as such. Okay, next one. This is the Human Fighter Noble. Their goal is civilize Phandalin. So basically, you're going to try to civilise Phandalin, deal with the orcs that have been causing trouble, and generally just help Sildar Hallwinter set up the location, and Sildar's in the company of Gundren Rockseeker. So that's fine. That sort of ties in with helping Gundren a little bit. There's a little bit of discussion about that. It's one of the better ones, I would say, but it doesn't necessarily spell it out yet again. Okay, this is the elf. I believe this is the elf wizard. Their goal is to reconsecrate the defiled altar, which is supposedly somewhere in Cragmore Castle, and you probably don't know the location of Cragmore Castle, or the player's character shouldn't, and players shouldn't, but they will hopefully find Cragmore Castle. But when they get to Cragmore Castle, will they be more interested in saving Gundren Rockseeker, or making sure they find that altar and getting rid of the defiled nature that has been imposed upon it? You can see where I'm going with all of this. Where we haven't really necessarily talked about Gundren and how important Gundren is. Okay, the last one. This is the human folk hero. This is the one that really throws a spanner in the works, and that is your personal goal is to drive off the dragon. Somewhere in the ruins of Thunder Tree, which you may or may not know the location of, there is a dragon that needs to be driven off. Okay, that's far more exciting than delivering a wagon supply of mining equipment, and that can really cause a few problems, because what happens if the players find out this information from one of the players' characters, because they've got this personal goal, and they think, oh, we're only level 1, but it sounds really exciting. Should we go there? Yeah, let's go there instead. As you know, we'll do the wagon delivery thing later. So they're good, but they're problematic. And I found that when I was running this adventure, what would happen is once a player had completed their personal goal, they would ask me, okay, so what's my next personal goal? And I would say, well, your goal now is to help Gundren Rockseeker because he's been captured by goblins and he's in jeopardy and the Rockseeker brothers need your help. And then they would just look at me like, huh? Yeah, but that's what everybody else is doing. So there's the problem with those individual character goals. Now, if you go straight to the adventure itself, on page 4, the Lost Mod phandelver presents a very basic adventure hook, giving you all the information you might need. Or is it? Is it really giving you all the things that you need? Because honestly, I don't think it does. This is what it reads like. Adventure hook. You can let the players invent their own reasons for visiting Phandalin. Aha. Okay, that's fine. Or you can use the following adventure hook. The backgrounds and secondary goals. See, it says secondary goals, but the players don't view them as secondary goals necessarily. On the character sheets also provide characters with motivations to visit Phandalin. So the goal seems to be to visit Phandalin. It doesn't seem to be to help Gundren. Then you get the patron, and the patron is Gundren. Meet me in Phandalin. The characters are in the city of Neverwinter when their dwarf patron and friend, but that really isn't spelled out in detail, Gundren Rockseeker hires them, doesn't ask them, hires them to escort a wagon to Phandalin. Gundren has gone ahead with a warrior called Sildar Hallwinter to attend to business in the town while the characters follow up with the supplies, and they will get paid 10 gold pieces each by the owner of Barthen's Provisions in Phandalin when they deliver the wagon safely to the trading post. That is all that needs to take place. This is the lead in, and this is why there's a problem with the adventure, because it keeps talking about Phandalin, its key reward is gold, and the provisor is they have to get the wagon supply to Barthen's Provisions, to the trading post, and that is it. I see so many different problems with this, it's not funny. Because as soon as you start talking about delivering something somewhere, you have eliminated the importance of Gundren. So escorting that wagon of mining supplies to Phandalin for Gundren Rockseeker, here's what's going to happen if you start opening it up to the players to actually decide why they are going there and what their connection to Gundren is. Was there much of a discussion, or even did you even notice anything to do with how they are supposed to be friends of Gundren Rockseeker? There's really, all it says is he's the dwarf patron and friend. It doesn't say get the players to explain to you what has happened in the past that makes you friends with Gundren Rockseeker. There was no discussion of that whatsoever. In fact, that has been left out, and that is where the problem lies with the adventure. Unfortunately, if you leave it to the player's characters, which of course you can, it's up to you, the adventure suggests letting them invent their own reasons. So this is what you're likely to get as a result. You're going to get weak, superficial character motivations that are based off gold and wealth, glory and fame, power and character advancement. That is what I found when I was running the game. It was one of the aspects, the first question that people would present to me is like, how come it's only 10 gold each? That's not very much, Fred. And I was like, okay, yeah, but you're only delivering a wagon from Neverwinter to Phandelver. It's going to take a couple of days. That's it. It's actually quite a lot of money. But in their eyes, it doesn't seem like a lot of money, and it doesn't. That seems to be the only motivation for their character. Which, of course, as soon as you bring in money, is going to be a weak start to any adventure. And that's why I don't think it works very well. Here's the other problem that comes with this lead into your adventure. And we are going to talk about how to solve these things for those of you who are wondering when I'm going to get to that. Gundren Rockseeker is only going to pay each of them 10 gold pieces to deliver the wagon to Barthen's provisions. As it happens, Gundren isn't making the payment. It's actually going to be made by Ulma Barthen at the trading post. So as long as they show up with a wagon, Gundren doesn't even have to be alive or be anywhere for them to get paid. That's it. That's all there is to it. If they show up with a wagon of supplies intact, they get paid, they get their reward, and now they can go and pursue their individual goals. Because they've been provided with all these individual goals, which are really cool and sound quite fun. And so off they go. And that's exactly what players tend to do when you run through this adventure. And there is where the problem lies. So let's start talking about how to sort this out. Because I imagine there's more than a few people who've been dungeon mastering this adventure who have found this crop up for them. Sorry, I need a drink of water. Okay, so the adventure states that the characters are friends with Gundren Rockseeker, but there's no context. There's no, there really isn't a collection of information that they assume the dungeon master will present to the players about how they are friends with Gundren. That is assumed that will take place. Now, that's probably because the book, the adventure itself, has been condensed. It probably did exist initially. It doesn't exist now because they probably had to cut it out and figured that the few lines that they presented were going to be sufficient for people to actually figure that out and build it in themselves. That's not a good way to deal with anything, particularly as a start adventure designed for new dungeon masters who have to run a game. So half the adventure relies on the characters rescuing Gundren Rockseeker. Literally, if they don't engage with it, that means Cragmore Hideout doesn't get done, and potentially Cragmore Castle won't be found or engaged with at all, and if they do, you might find yourself in a predicament where the players decide to go after the altar and look for the altar rather than worrying about whether Gundren survives or not, or get distracted by getting paid for delivering the wagon. So here are my suggestions to you to solve these issues. Let us start off with the fact that I've already done a video on who is Gundren Rockseeker so that you have a bit of information. That video is available. It shouldn't be hard to find. It will probably be linked in some way to this video. And I would suggest that you have any dwarf characters, any person who's playing a dwarf in your group should be related to Gundren Rockseeker. make sure they are related in some way and give them enough information about Gundren and his family and his life that it's going to work. Otherwise, all sorts of hassles are going to ensue. So I did that video specifically to deal with that issue. The other thing is, Gundren has a bunch of brothers, so talk a little bit about Gundren and his brothers. So talk about Thaden, and also, Thaden is an important part of Gundren's life. They may have met Thaden at some point, Gundren Rockseeker. They might have met Nundro. Gundren Rockseeker might be part of their backstory in some way, that they have experienced Nundro and Gundren at some point for whatever reason. It's up to them. It's up to the Dungeon Master to see if they can get that out of the players. That's all really helpful, but also to what sort of background or interactions have they had with Gundren? Have they had a dwarf meal? Have they sat down to the dinner table and eaten with Gundren and his brothers? Maybe they have, maybe they haven't, but I suggest you make sure that they have. And do they know that Gundren has a love for food and drink and lots of it? So talk about that sort of stuff and set the scene a little bit rather than going in bat out of hell and think that it's all going to work out. What sort of times have they had? Have they had jolly dwarf times or jolly parties with Gundren and his brothers and other dwarves? Even if the players' characters are not related to Gundren because they're not dwarves, you still need to have these elements tied in, otherwise it's really going to work badly for you. Okay, so make sure you cover that base first. When it comes to dealing with Gundren, make sure that they have an opportunity to talk with Gundren before the adventure takes place. And I would suggest to you, one of the strongest elements of it is have Gundren explain the situation in Phandelver, so he's a source of accurate information for the players as they run through their adventure. Now, if you do something like that, you've just made him more important, because they can get a lot of information that they might not be able to get from other non-player characters. And losing Gundren means their information source is gone. And so therefore he should hopefully be more important. Make sure that Gundren explains what's taking place in Phandelver. Get him to talk about the Red Brand bandits who are threatening the locals, and how the locals will probably be very ungrateful if they help them out, might pay them to do so, and that getting rid of the Red Brand bandits would also help solidify and secure his mining operation, because if the Red Brands find out about his mining operation, it might actually be under threat. And so therefore, this business is not just about them delivering the wagon, it's also about potentially becoming security for Phandelver and Gundren and his brothers. There's another way of hooking them in and tying them to Gundren, making Gundren more important. Make sure that Gundren talks about the Orc Raiders that have bounties on their head. Talk about the fact that they can earn a decent living just wiping out the orcs in the area if they wanted to. Another reason why they should hopefully be interested in keeping close to Gundren, because he can provide them with information. Get Gundren to explain that goblins have been ambushing travelling merchants, and that he's concerned that they might actually experience a goblin ambush while they're delivering their wagon from Neverwinter to Phandelver, and therefore they need to watch out and be careful. This is why he's hired them and paid them rather than just ask them to deliver the wagon as a favour, because there is a bit of danger involved potentially. All of these things help tie and connect the players' characters, and hopefully the players, because if you work on the players, it will translate into the characters. Tie them to Gundren Rockseeker so that he becomes more important. I have more. Okay, so what's the deal? Gundren has got a mine. He's opening up. He needs supplies. He's obviously going into business. He's a businessman, a business dwarf. That means, why not let Gundren provide them with a business opportunity? And I already talked briefly about it. Gundren should definitely offer them a business opportunity as security for his mine. So if they lose Gundren, that means their income source from that is gone. And security gets paid reasonably well, provided that a mine is doing well. And Gundren's found a mine that he believes is going to do extremely well. So therefore, there's another link and tie into it. There's another opportunity here, and that is, no doubt your players will have characters with a little bit of a rough edge to them. So arrange for something to take place, have a talk to the players, and maybe if one of them has had trouble with the law and wound up in prison or in jail or needed bail, have Gundren be the individual, the dwarf, responsible for bailing the players' characters out of jail, paying the bill and getting them out so that they can, or even paying for their court fines, maybe hiring them somebody as a lawyer to represent them in court when they are seeing the judge, all of those sorts of things, so that they have some sort of link to Gundren. Here's the other thing that I think is probably even more important than all the things I've talked about, and I suggest you use as much of this stuff as possible, and that is have an adventure with Gundren. Start it off. Doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be involved, but definitely run some sort of mini adventure with Gundren Rockseeker before you run the Lost Mine of Phandelver, so that they have some sort of background and connection with him. That is the easiest way to make it all gel and work together. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. I would suggest that even though it's been done before, you've seen it in The Hobbit, but maybe the players' characters are captured by elves and have to escape in wine barrels down a river or down a waterfall or something like that. It's quite a cool way of setting them up. You start off with something that's a bit of an escape from a prison. Doesn't always work great, but there are other options. If you want to keep it really simple and you're worried there's too many moving parts, you can always go for the very simple Tavern brawl. Yeah, why not? All it takes is something really simple. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can be one encounter, and it doesn't have to be a deadly encounter where people will die. Okay? It can simply just be a fight. I just need a drink of water. Alright, so what does that look like? Maybe this is going to look a little bit like Gundren has a business colleague where the business has fallen apart or the deal went bad and they've both lost money, but they're not very happy about it. It might be a dwarf, you could make it anybody you like, and they wind up showing up at a tavern while Gundren is having a meal or drinking with his buddies, which are the players' characters. And there is an argument that takes place. And as a result of that argument, it turns into a bit of a mess. You can roleplay it as you like, but whatever's going to happen, this person is not going to back down. They've brought some ruffians with them, they've brought some muscle with them, and there's going to be some fisticuffs. So you can make it clear that they don't draw weapons. I would even stipulate at the tavern that there is a weapon checkpoint, so where you have to actually take off your weapons and stow them rather than wear them while you're in the tavern. This is probably something that most places would do to ensure that they don't wind up with people trying to slice each other in the middle of getting drunk, because that's what happens in taverns, right? People get drunk. So that's what I would suggest you have a go at doing. And as apparently my channel is supposedly about providing you with examples, I have talked about providing you with an example, but I'm actually going to provide you with an example, even if it might seem very, very simple and sparse. I would suggest that whoever shows up to confront Gundren is only dealing with, make sure they are commoners. We don't want anybody who's going to be a major threat where it's going to be a problem. This isn't really about giving the players experience points, and it's not really about making sure that they get a challenging encounter. In fact, it's going to be quite easy. What you'll want to do is set it up so that they have had some experience fighting along Gundren Rockseeker at some point. That's really all it's about. Okay, so make sure to use a commoner. Don't go and use the bandits. If you try using bandits, it could be a little bit messy, because one bandit for one group of level 1s can be a little bit messy in an open straight out fight, although they have the advantage of action economy. I would suggest don't turn it into a straight out clear battle where it's all about giving them a challenge, because that's not the point of it. The point is to make sure that they feel like they have a close connection with Gundren Rockseeker. Now, there is a lot of shadow falling on my map. I do apologise. I'll pull it up and hopefully you can see. I'll try to move the miniatures into the light as much as I possibly can while I'm doing this, just to make it easier for you to see what's going on. Okay, let us play this out. So here's our scene. Here's our adventurers over here. And Gundren is at the end here. He's the dwarf in the blue and white. I've grabbed some dice, but honestly, when it comes to any kind of fight, the chances are you won't need anything more than a 20-sided dice, whether you're running the bandits and the non-player characters, and a 4-sided dice, because fisticuff battles are pretty simple. They're not very complicated. So they show up, check their weapons, and go over to Gundren's table. And of course, an argument is going to ensue at some point. And he's brought some muscle with him to reinforce the fact that he wants to get paid. And Gundren is obviously, he doesn't have the money. He's not going to pay them. It's not going to happen. It's really up to you how you make that play out, but I would suggest that it's probably more interesting for you and the players if you present it first as a role play rather than just go straight into a fight. Okay? But whatever happens, it's going to turn into a fight, but give them an opportunity to communicate with each other. That doesn't mean it has to be a fight. Okay? Just because I'm presenting it as a fight, you might decide that the players intervene, and because their group is so intimidating and scary, that they scare off this particular individual who's had this bad dealing with Gundren Rockseeker, and that's all you need to do. Okay, so it doesn't need to be a combat. But if it does turn into a combat, then all you're doing is moving this into a very simple, basically roll for initiative. Make sure that your non-player characters are rolling for initiative as well. Make sure that Gundren isn't placing himself at huge risk, because that would be silly. You have the opportunity to present lots of different options to people, so I would suggest stick with just fisticuffs. So how does it work when it comes to non-weapon based combat? Unless you're a monk, it's very, very simple. Okay, monks are a little bit different. You're just going to roll a dice, and then the damage that you do when you're punching somebody is 1 plus your strength modifier. That's it. Nothing else to it. Okay? And it means too that when you're knocking somebody down to 0 hit points, then stipulate that you're knocking them out, that you're not killing them with a blow with your fist. You might even decide that that doesn't seem quite as interesting, and as the battle sort of moves around the tavern, we're going to make sure that there's some involvement with the different bits of furniture. So if you want to use a bottle or a chair, then it's an improvised weapon. Okay, so roll your attack as you normally would with your 20-sided dice, add your attack modifier. You won't be proficient when you're doing this, okay, so it's a little bit harder to hit than just using your fists. When you're using your fists, you're always proficient. And then roll a 4-sided dice and add your strength modifier to that, and that's to represent you breaking a chair over the top of somebody, or ripping off the leg off a chair and using it as a club, or using a mug as a weapon, something like that. All of which, should be non-lethal. Now, if somebody starts to get a bit carried away and starts going for the magic, wants to really lay it down thick, then certainly have consequences. Have the local law show up, break it up, and then escort them to jail. And this is where Gundren can then bail them out. Another connection you can make with the players' characters and Gundren, which I already talked about. Okay, so that's it. It's pretty simple. It's not too hard. I'm hoping that people will find this useful and helpful in some way. I certainly have tried really hard to come up with something that would be super useful to you in your game, so that you didn't have any problems with how the players were operating. Now, it's not going to solve your problems if you've already started running the game, okay? But it will certainly highlight the importance of making sure that the connection with the main goal of the adventure, which is to help Gundren Rockseeker, is pursued. So don't get waylaid by giving them more personal or individual goals, because that's just going to cause you a whole lot of headache. Okay? Alright, so if you like this video, please share and like the video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing now, hitting the bell button, and that'll get you notified when I go live. I go live quite a lot, and when I publish new videos that are pre-recorded. I'd also say, look, if you want to support my channel, supporting my channel is great, and you can do that by watching more of my videos. And there's bound to be something you'll find useful, I certainly hope so. I don't do Patreon, but down in the description you'll find affiliate links to Amazon, the book depository. You buy stuff online, I get paid a small commission, you pay exactly the same price as you normally would, and you don't have to buy the thing I have linked to. So just go through the link and buy what you want. You can just go from there, okay? If you have anything to say, right now is the time to say it. So in the chat box, get busy with those typewriters and send through your feedback, your questions. Let's deal with it now. If you're not part of the live stream, that's what the comment section is all about, okay? Down there, your feedback, your questions. I'll try my best to get to everybody. I'm trying to sort of give myself one day where I go through all of the comments that are worth responding to, that is, and responding to people as best I can and giving them what they want. Some of the questions that people ask are quite complicated, and it takes me a little time to sort of get them together, okay? And that is it. So, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Where's my big dice? I'm not gone, but I am going to ditch the scene, because I am a little worried that it might result in some lag, and I know that lag can occur very easily if I'm using anything that's picking up moving picture, whereas the static image is a lot less trouble. Okay, so we will pick up a different image, and let's respond to the chat box. Okay, what do we got here? How's it going, Nick? Doesn't it mention somewhere that Gundren promises you that you'll be rich beyond your wildest dreams? It actually, I don't remember there being a section on that anywhere. I know that at the end of the adventure, Nick, it does say that if you do help Gundren and he does survive, that Gundren will offer 10% of the earnings from the mine. Now, that is another problem in itself, and I'll explain that all in a different video, okay? I don't remember it saying anything like that in the slightest. But if you can come up with a page number, by all means, throw it my way. I don't think that's necessarily going to be sufficient to tie them in, because remember, if their only motivation is gold and wealth, and there's no real connection personally with their character and Gundren, then why would they do it? I don't think anybody would. Okay, so just that's my thought behind it anyway. Okay, Jeff, could I have Gundren Rockseeker adventure with a party and have the party protect him? Well, certainly once they rescue Gundren, I think that you certainly could. The thing to remember is Gundren will have to be played in such a way that he's near the back. Okay, he's squishy. He's not a main player, and he's not really the type of individual. His brothers are much more sort of hands-on, unless of course you want to rewrite how Gundren operates. I think Gundren is more of a businessman than anything else. But you're the dungeon master. It's your adventure. As soon as you start handling it, you make it your own. Okay. I would just be very careful, because if you lose Gundren, that sort of everything starts to fall apart. Remember, there's only 2 of the Rockseekers still alive. One of his brothers has already died, and if Gundren dies, there's only 1 brother left, and if he perishes, then suddenly it gets a bit more complicated, although I suppose you could say the party can just claim the mine as their own. Okay. Alright, Nick, you've got a star here. It would cut out a lot of the reasons to follow the breadcrumbs to find him. Yes, it would. I personally had Sildar with the adventurers at the start, and then stay at the town, and he gave them directions. Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. Sildar would certainly be willing to do that sort of thing, but it doesn't tie them to Gundren. Sildar can certainly adventure with the player's characters, but it still doesn't necessarily mean that they're pursuing what, unless of course Sildar will only go with them if they're going to go and help Gundren. That's a bit different. Shivan Zombie, you retracted your message. I'm not sure why, but I'm coming through. Slice of Scott, do you recommend using cutscenes in your games? I recommend you doing whatever you think will work. The problem with a cutscene, if that means the Dungeon Master is going to do a lot of talking, you need to be very careful about that. I find my players switch off quite quickly. If I were to read out an entire paragraph, then they're starting to lose it. Anything more than a paragraph of text that you are reading out or presenting to them can wind up resulting in them switching off or resorting to instigation, making something happen because they are bored. It just seems to be how it is. So cutscenes are fine, particularly if you think that them playing through a particular part isn't really worthwhile. Certainly you don't have to play out all of the travel time that, a cutscene travelling from Neverwinter to Phandelver makes sense. You don't want to sort of use real time with that, game time. Game time is like, yes, you spent 2 weeks doing this, but it only took 2 seconds, okay? Shivan Zombie, I told my party that they each arrive individually and saw his job on a help wanted poster, okay? I made him super friendly and chat up the party and be a useful character so the players wanted to help him. Well, that's a good idea. That's certainly a good way of presenting him. I think that it's probably stronger to make Gundren a really good old friend rather than just a really friendly NPC. But if it worked for you, Shaven, if I've pronounced your name incorrectly, I do apologise. I'm probably going to have to. I'm going to apologise now because I probably already have. Okay. I hit enter too early. Laugh out loud. It was only half a comment. All right, no problems. No issues there whatsoever. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't scaring you off. I'm not trying to be scary or anything. I am approachable. I try really hard to make everything that I do easy for people to sort of identify with. Okay, well, there don't seem to be any more comments. We've covered pretty much everything that I think we need to cover. I believe that the next video on Lost... Oh, okay, alright, spoke too soon. As soon as I say I'm going to leave, everybody starts chucking in the comments. Okay. American Z, how's it going, man? Or she, he. I know that this adventure is recommended to beginners, but would a group with more experience get any fun out of it? To be fair, I feel like this adventure is good for anybody, okay? Whether it's beginners or experienced players. The only thing you'll find with the Lost Mine of Phandelver is experienced players will pick up immediately on the fact that Gundren has gone off with Sildar Hallwinter on his own and they are delivering the wagon. They will insist that Gundren travel with them, knowing fully well that he will probably come to some sort of grief because it's such an obvious lead-in. And they've played lots of Dungeons and Dragons, so they'll see that it'll be a red flag, okay? But it's still a really good adventure, Honestly, most adventures now that are getting produced are way too long, and this is much shorter. It's written more like an old style Dungeons and Dragons adventure, and as a result it's much easier to prepare, although it has its issues and problems which we are dealing with right now. It's still a very good adventure, and I know that people new to the game loved it, and I know people who were experienced loved it. I had one dungeon master show up and he was rather concerned. He's like, oh, I can see what's going to go and happen. He was a dungeon master, he could see the signals, and he knew exactly what was going to happen, and as a result, at the end I said, how'd it go? He said, look, I was, even though I could see what was happening, I actually had a good time. And I was like, great, that's good news. Right, Nick, what do you got here? Would you recommend having Gundren go with a party to Wave Echo if he survives? Well, I wouldn't recommend anything to you. You could. I would assume that Gundren would probably go with them, but not necessarily journey into the cave itself, because it's quite dangerous in there. It's dangerous for the players, it's going to be dangerous for Gundren, and the idea is to protect Gundren. And I've come across a few groups who've had the entire party wiped out by the jello in there, and some of the undead, or they've encountered Nesna, and Nesna has dropped darkness on them, and then had a whole lot of spiders come in and just rack them all up and finish them off. So yes, you could wind up with an apocalypse if you... that's not what you were referring to. Okay, sorry about that. Nick, I personally had him injured with a skill check to convince him to follow. They failed. Okay, alright. Right, what do you got here, Jeff? I tried to start with Princes of the Apocalypse. Yeah, Princes of the Apocalypse is one of my least favourite adventures in terms of a Dungeon Master. It is overwhelming. I've done a review on it, I've talked about it. I put together, Jeff, an index to help one of my friends who was Dungeon Mastering for me. I played through. I ran part of the adventure, and then my players said, look, we're not enjoying this anymore, Fred. We don't want it anymore. We want to play something else. And I said, okay, fine, it's all right. But that index was absolutely vital for getting through that adventure. It's just a bit too stringy, and it's so sandboxy that it does cause problems sometimes. So hence, I totally understand your response to that, because yeah, it's not unusual. It's actually quite common. Okay. All right, what else have we got here? Running through the comment section. All right. Well, it looks like I've caught up to everything. And if that's the case, I would like to rest my voice and come back tomorrow. I'm not going anywhere. Nick, I plan to follow up starter with Horde of the Dragon Queen, as a higher level would make the opening scene more achievable. Yeah, you could. Horde of the Dragon Queen isn't difficult to run, it's just a bit annoying in terms of following the treasure. Spoilers for those of you who are playing Horde of the Dragon Queen, okay? Spoilers, Horde of the Dragon Queen. Alright. My suggestion to you is that you'll find that all of the kobolds and cultists and so forth will get very, very easy. It'll be you'll have to adjust absolutely everything if you go from The Lost Mine of Phandelver straight into episode 1 of Horde of the Dragon Queen. What I would suggest is have episode 1, 2 and 3 and 4 play out already, and then go into Horde of the Dragon Queen at episode 5. Okay? Have them hired. Somebody else has done all the legwork and they are filling in the spot because for whatever reason something bad happened to the last group. That's what I would suggest you do. Although you do lose out on episode 1, which is quite... it's certainly an interesting episode, and episode 2 is probably one of the most fun ones around, but you still need to sort of you don't want to have to spend too much work building all of this and adjusting everything. And you will find, even if you don't even if you start at level 1 with Horde of the Dragon Queen, I know groups who finished Horde of the Dragon Queen and they weren't level 8 or 7, they were 5. So it's entirely possible that you can get through all of that without too much trouble. So if they're already level 5 and they're starting the very first part of Horde of the Dragon Queen, you're going to have to adjust literally everything. It just seems like a lot of work. But it's up to you, man. You love the town siege. I'll make them mega kobolds. Yeah, well, you know what you can do. You could decide that the first 2 episodes are going to play out, and maybe somebody else does episodes 3 and 4. It's totally up to you. I mean, and if you want to adjust everything, you can. I mean, the structure's there, and you know, just max out the kobolds' hit points, or probably double them in some cases. That might not even be enough. Yeah, we're going to have to make some adjustments anyway. Okay, have we got through everybody's questions? Because this video is heading on to 45 minutes. My voice is going to disappear. You're welcome, Nick. I'm glad you like the advice. Yes, I'm going to go. Well, I'm not going to rest. I'm going to grab a sledgehammer and I'm going to pound stakes into the ground. That's what I'm going to do. It doesn't sound like rest to me, but I need to go and do it. If I don't do it, nobody else will. Okay. All right. So I will catch up with everybody tomorrow. I'm probably going to be painting a barmaid. I'm going to paint a barmaid, or I'm going to try to paint a barmaid. I'm not going to say I'm painting a barmaid because my painting skills aren't that fantastic. And certainly I'm going to try. That's the intention. I'm going to try. Yeah. Okay. All right. I will see everybody later for painting tomorrow if you want to hang out with me. Otherwise, the next Lost Mine of phandelver video will be a questions and answers session. I said I would do one a month, and even though I missed out on doing one of the videos I had planned before that, a month has come up, I'm pretty sure, so I'm pretty sure next week it's questions and answers on the Lost Mine of phandelver.